Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, there's been a lot of discussion about the 2019 flooding on the Missouri River and surrounding rivers, and the 2011 flooding that happened on the same river system. Here's a couple of the similarities and differences. Both of them had huge Rocky Mountain snowpack that was melting quickly, plus snowpack that was on the ground earlier in the season that added to the problems. A big difference, though, was that the 2011 floods happened in May and in June, whereas these floods are happening now in March. The 2019 floods were made worse by ice jams, plus the rapid snowmelt and a 3 to 5 inch rainfall event. But still, both of them were historic on the Mississippi River, but mainly the Missouri River and its surrounding tributaries. But I just want to show you, look at the two maps here. This is May 2011 and June 2011 precipitation anomalies. So we can see the problem started here and then moved here in June. So it's a little bit different, but I just wanted to kind of show you the similarities between these two events. One thing is for sure, the last 2 weeks have been very wet in the Central Plains. You can see widespread 2+ inches of rainfall hitting regions that we know have already been wet going into this. I'm talking specifically here about the Mid-South where the Ohio River and the Mississippi come together, and also about the heavy rains we saw on top of that snowpack in Iowa, South Dakota, and Nebraska. And all of this is just coming right down the major pipeline here in the middle part of the United States. That would be the Mississippi River, which means our flooding problems are going to continue. Not only do we have so many gauges in flood stage already here and in the lower Mississippi River Valley, but there's still a lot of snowpack that's going to get into all of this and work its way south. So our flooding problems are nowhere close to being done. Just to show you what the current snowpack still looks like, we're looking here in the North Central Plains. We can see that North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and northern Wisconsin still have on the ground, in terms of equivalent snow water content, anywhere between 2 and maybe as much as 8 inches of liquid equivalent. That still has to melt and get down the pipeline. And I'll tell you something, today is the first full day of spring. I'm drawing a line here for sunset last night, Wednesday night, showing you that the day-night line ran straight north-south. So the sun's rays are perpendicular to the equator. The sun is rising on the North Pole. It is setting on the South Pole. It will not rise again for 6 months on the South Pole here, but it'll be up for the next 6 months on the North Pole. And this just means days are getting longer, and with that, we're increasing our sun angles. A major consequence of increasing sun angles, lengthening the day. Check out the snowpack right now in the Dakotas and parts of Minnesota. Watch what happens as we animate forward, just looking out over the next week or so. We see that snowpack shrinking in size. It's not necessarily due to a lot of warm weather that's coming. It's not going to be really, really warm, but with those longer days, higher sun angles, we're going to start melting the snow. So our flood problems are far from over, and right now, what are we dealing with? Well, we just had a little system sneak right through. We talked about this in our last update that went through parts of Nebraska, northern Kansas, southern Iowa, northern Missouri, over toward Illinois, causing some problems. We're watching today a system here off the East Coast. This is going to be a nor'easter that runs up to the northeast here. And then California, you've been wet over the last 3 days. This is nowhere near done, especially for northern California. Those are the main areas we're going to be talking about. We do still have a system emerging in the Central Plains coming out at the end of this weekend. So let's get right into it and talk about it. I do have some good news, and it's shown to you right here in this map that looks over the next week. The middle part of the country is seeing, with each new model run, less and less total accumulated precipitation. We're going to talk about why in a few minutes. But overall, what do we see? Getting down here toward the Gulf Coast, things are relatively dry. But running up the northeast here, here's our nor'easter happening. Northern Plains relatively dry. California, though, southern Oregon, about to get multiple systems coming on shore. Let's take a closer look at all of these. First, why is this system that's coming through the middle part of the country weakening with time? Well, look at our flow of the jet stream. It is split right now to a large ridge that runs up into western Canada, that dips down into a broader trough kind of over the Hudson Bay. The southern branch of this jet stream comes in right in through here. Now, with split flow in this part of the country, this would normally be a bit of a drier time period for this area. We've been talking about that for quite some time now. So systems are coming through, but they're not the big ones like we saw more than a week ago. But what I want you to pay attention to here as I animate this forward, let's get rid of those drawings here, is I want you to watch the little wave that we're going to be watching after the weekend sneaking through the Four Corner States into the Central Plains. right here is what I'm talking about specifically. This is now getting into Sunday afternoon, into Monday morning. I'd been talking about for quite some time now that we're watching the 24th, 25th, 26th for a vigorous little system that was going to come somewhere through the center part of the country. Here's the good news. The wave that was going to produce this has flattened out. Okay? Now, whenever we see the flow of the jet stream really take on a lot of curve like this, that indicates a much stronger system. But I just drew a line there showing you how flat this wave is. This removes some of the upper level strength from the system, the upper level divergence, which makes the system stronger and stronger. So flat waves produce weaker systems. But look over there in California. You see this wave that we see right over here? That one has got a lot more curvature to it, and that is why Northern California, you're going to be seeing multiple systems coming on shore over the coming days here, causing a flooding threat in that area. But with that kind of diagnosis here, let's just step back and see how things are going to progress. We're watching three things. The nor'easter to move out of the Carolinas toward the northeast. Secondly, as the next few systems come across the Central Plains, there will be the risk for some stronger storms to the south. We'll look at that. And then again, you're going to see Northern California, seeing quite a bit of heavy precipitation. So as we animate this forward, let's just step back. You see that throughout the day on Thursday, right over Washington, D.C., getting up toward, really toward New York City by the time we get into the overnight hours, our nor'easter is going. Pretty decent low pressure system right there. Some snow will be at the, further back inland in parts of New York here, but it looks as though this one, as it wraps out, primarily is going to be quite a bit of windy conditions. Now, over here in the far eastern part of the Corn Belt, so parts of Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, we'll see some strong winds from the north and the chance of the changeover here from rain over to some snow. So we'll keep a close eye on that as we get into the day on Friday, but definitely some stronger winds. In the meantime, if we come back to the Central Plains by Friday, what we're going to be seeing here is higher pressure starts to build in the middle part of the country. But we get a little bit of moisture that's returning here, coming up into the higher plains of Colorado and western parts of Kansas, and also the Panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. So we're going to see this is relatively lighter precipitation here in parts of Colorado and surrounding states, but this is the beginning of the next system that squeezes through Friday night into Saturday morning. Now, why is this here? Well, you can see dominant high pressure sitting over Illinois. We got moisture returning out of the Gulf into this area, and there's a weak little wave that moves out ahead of this. So this could bring some upslope flow and some snow to parts of Colorado right in through here. Some very windy but wet conditions in the Central Plains. Now, we're not talking about adding lots and lots and lots of rain here, but this is again raining on a region that is already flooded. I am concerned about stronger storms to the south of this next system coming through this weekend. Meanwhile, as we let this system progress, you see that by Sunday, that bigger wave comes there and it pushes on over to Illinois. Because it has flattened out, we've now really reduced the ability for the system to be strong. So we're going to be seeing throughout the weekend rain spreading over into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, trailing a cold front that goes through parts of Kentucky into Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, and northern Louisiana and Texas. So right in through here. Again, watching for some stronger storms in this area. But it's going to be about timing that helps us understand if those storms are actually going to be severe. That, by the time we get into Tuesday morning, progresses toward the southeast, and a big area of higher atmospheric pressure dominates the Midwest again. With that, though, comes some cooler weather. But look over at California. Here comes our next system onshore by next Wednesday, and it sweeps across the country and heads toward the northern plains. Now, we don't have any details on this system coming out. This is all the way out a week from now, more than a week from now. But it just suggests that as each one of these systems hits California, it may invigorate after it gets over the mountains another low in the middle part of the country. That's why I said the pattern's active. We're not shutting that down at all. With each one of these systems, we just bring in the Gulf moisture like you see here, and somewhere in the north central plains, a low pressure system will emerge. Okay, since I've been telling you so much about California, I just want to show you this. This is the current reservoir conditions in California, and only 2 of their reservoirs right now are not over 100% of average. That would be Trinity Lake, and I hope I'm saying this right, but I've got Castaic Lake down here in the kind of the Southern California region. Everything else is doing quite well. So California, you've got more precipitation on the way. Now let's flip this discussion over towards temperatures. One of my favorite maps to be looking at this time of year comes from the National Phenology Network. It's the Spring Leaf Index Anomaly map. And about the only places where it's been quite warm so far this spring in February, March has been down here in the southeast. So this is kind of the peanut and cotton belt and the southern extent of the corn belt here. So we've got an early spring happening here, but around the rest of the country, not so much. March 1st through March 19th has favored very cold conditions across much of the United States, as you can see here in this average temperature anomaly map. Now, are we going to be seeing any changes? The answer is yes, but the warmth that will be coming in waves. This is a highly active pattern that will be dominated by two features. We've discussed this quite a bit. Here is our ridge sitting over parts of Western Canada. This is migrating toward Alaska. Now, with time, that migration toward Alaska means cooler risks across the eastern two-thirds of the country. But we're going to be seeing kind of this daisy chain of low pressure systems orbiting around that ridge, which is what keeps our pattern active, okay? So let's kind of see how this all plays out as we move forward in the forecast. Now, again, I'm calling this waves of warmth, and here's the reason why. First of all, deep trough up the east coast, that's our nor'easter. See the ridge building in the middle part of the country? That sweeps through, bringing in a brief warm-up. But this little trough that's snuck underneath this, that's our weather system moving through the middle part of the country Saturday into Sunday and Monday. But a ridge builds again out west and progresses. See how nothing is really blocked up for the United States, such that we build in temperatures again for next week in the middle part of the country. But Northern California, look, troughs coming in repeatedly in that area. By the time I get us out to the end of March, two dominant features. Over in the west coast, ridge sitting over Alaska, trough sitting to its south. So this again is going to keep an active pattern for California. This ridge is going to shove that trough to the south here. Our deeper trough is sitting primarily over the Hudson Bay, getting up toward Greenland. I much prefer it there than sitting over the Great Lakes. If it sat over the Great Lakes, this would be an extremely cold March pattern for much of us here in the Corn Belt. But because it's retreated a bit to the north, the higher sun angles plus the longer days are going to keep the really, really cold air at bay. If I get these drawings off here, and I know I'm spending quite a bit of time on this, but this is important for our spring planting progress. Once we stretch this out to the beginning of April, what we see here is that the warmer waters off the southeast may help influence more ridging here across the eastern part of the country. And this will just in general keep much of the country away from the bitterly cold air as we progress into April. Combine that with a strong Pacific jet, and it means that the potential for having a really, really cold pattern again is quite low. Okay, what does this mean in terms of temperatures? Let's just watch this every 6 hours. You're going to see waves of warmth followed by cold air behind it. So you can see behind our nor'easter, look at the cooler weather coming into the eastern half of the country for the weekend. Now, as we get into early next week, see the warmth building across the east. And then as that system progresses through, another shot at some cooler air. But then watch, here comes again, end of next week, another surge of warmth. But because the pattern's unblocked, another shot at some cooler air. As I take you all the way out here to the beginning of April, you start to see, oh, wow, it looks so cool. No, this is just the model putting together all 51 members of its ensemble, suggesting that we're going to be keeping a slight cool bias in the central plains, but with ridging over the southeast and then really the whole of the east coast, we're going to try to push this cooler air out with time. So again, we're going to hang on until we get rid of that snow here in the central plains, northern plains, really a slight cool bias. Again, get rid of the ridge over Alaska, this all breaks down and we get into a pretty warm pattern. Now I want to take you quickly to a couple other places around the world. You see the two circulations here north of Australia. These are two tropical systems that are going to be giving Australia some problems here in the near term. One is named Trevor, sitting right here. The other one is named Veronica. Now, Veronica is not forecast to really impact Australia too much over the next week, just hitting here this kind of northwest coast. But Trevor is on the move and will be spreading right in through parts of Queensland and New South Wales. Now, if you want to, blow the video up full screen and pause it. You can see down here in the bottom left, I put in the crop calendars. This is primarily, since we're talking about March through April here. We're primarily affecting in Queensland. We're in dent stage. We're maturing here. Our corn crop, sorghum, you can also see its stages, but cotton right now is in boll formation and moving toward harvest. When we talk about New South Wales, again, I got March and April in through here. We can see similar situations for cotton and for corn as well. So this is important for the cotton and corn crops that are going on right now in parts of Argentina. I'm sorry, in parts of Australia. Wrong A country there. Speaking of Argentina, though, things are looking dry over the coming days and cool, but they're starting to harvest that corn crop down there in Argentina, and things are looking very good due to a lot of surplus rainfall across several fields in Argentina. So this drier weather here is not necessarily something to be feared. The wetter conditions that we see stretching into this region in Brazil, great for the safrinha crop, bad for the crop that we're trying to get out right now, the soybean crop that's trying to get finished in parts of eastern Brazil. But overall, this particular pattern favorable for that safrinha crop. Now the question is, how long are we going to see some of those the weather conditions in Brazil? Well, I'll just tell you something. We're watching carefully right now our next Kelvin wave kind of making its way to the surface here as we progress toward the end of March and into April. So we're looking at the depth of water here in the Pacific Ocean, and that surgence of warm water there is going to surface right in through here, which is going to give our El Nino some life and some strength. And that right now has a positive correlation with precipitation here in parts of Brazil. Now, I gave a full discussion about what's going on with this El Nino in my long-range weather update, which came out just yesterday on Wednesday. If you go to my.nutrienagsolutions.com, go to Weather Store, you can check that longer-range forecast out, which takes us all the way through spring. We're going to discuss a lot about El Nino in that video. But with that was a lot to cover. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video right here. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to our next ag forecast coming out soon. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.